Conspiracy Theories, From Politics to Paranoia, Week 4.
I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm afraid it's nothing more than a daydream.
This week, Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy. Page 1. Welcome to Week 4. In Week 4, we examine conspiracy theories surrounding the assassinations of two United States presidents, Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy. One of the preoccupations with these two assassinations is the puzzling tendency some conspiracy theorists have to find similarities or parallels between the two tragedies.
So as soon as it stops raining...
Even though most similarities between events separated by a century of time are likely due to nothing more than coincidence. Ultimately, we examine the possible motives and perpetrators of both assassinations. Clearly, the Lincoln assassination was a politically motivated hit by a rather extensive group of ultra-right-wing Southern Republicans who were opposed to the secession of the South and opposed to the abolition of slavery. Yet, if we believe the deathbed confessions of veteran CIA man E. Howard Hunt, Kennedy's assassination was also a conspiracy, involved a large number of participants who were hired by Vice President Lyndon Johnson in order to stop Kennedy's vow to dismantle both the CIA and the military-industrial complex. Perhaps the two assassinations have a great deal in common after all. Page 2. There's a picture of Ford's Theater, Washington, D.C. The coincidences between Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy are a piece of American folklore of unknown origin. The list of coincidences appeared in the mainstream American press in 1964, a year after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Having appeared prior to that in the GOP Congressional Committee newsletter, Martin Gardner debunked much of the list in an article in Scientific American, later reprinted in his book, The Magic Numbers of Dr. Matrix. Gardner's version of the list contains 16 items. Many subsequent versions have circulated, having much longer lists. The list is still in circulation today, having endured in the popular imagination for over 40 years. Lincoln-Kennedy coincidences. Wiki. With the analytical tools and an analysis of fame now in our repertoire, in Week 4 we begin analyzing specific groups of conspiracy theories and individual theories. Lincoln and Kennedy sounds like a folk duo from the mid-70s. In fact, these are the names of two of the most beloved American presidents, both champions of social justice, both gunned down in public by disturbed young men. Week 4's subject matter begins to address the issue of assassinations of famous people through the study of the tragic murders of two esteemed American statesmen, Lincoln and Kennedy. The idea of assassinations figures prominently in conspiracy theories. Terrible time to lose the beat. From Lincoln to Archduke Ferdinand, to Che Guevara, to Kennedy, to Martin Luther King, to Bhutto, and even to Tupac, the tragic murdering of important, revered people in our cultural history is a phenomenon that cannot be ever erased. From the collective memory of any society, we cling to the beloved memories we have of our esteemed leaders, and when there is mystery involved in the circumstances of their deaths, we struggle to make sense of every minute detail. In part, this is in order to make sense out of chaos and confusion, but surely it is also so that we may allocate blame for higher crimes against those who we admire. We are not surprised that then the conspiracy theorists that are widely considered to be perhaps the granddaddies of conspiracy theories were the assassinations of two of the most respected presidents in the United States, Abraham Lincoln, April 15th, 1965, and John F. Kennedy, November 22nd, 1963. It was not until the 9/11 conspiracy theory of the past decade that any conspiracy theory received so much attention, so much press, and so much hype as the conspiracy theories pertaining to these two slain titans of American politics. Numerous conspiracy theorists have even gone to great lengths to attempt to find resemblances, similarities between the circumstances of the Lincoln assassination and that of Kennedy. See Ron Curtis's Similarities Between the Assassinations of Kennedy and Lincoln-Kennedy Coincidences, or watch this YouTube clip concerning uncanny connections between Lincoln and JFK. Lincoln and JFK. I'm not actually going to watch it. Although these observations are fascinating examples of synchronicity or coincidence, what does the general comparative theory suggest? Those who take such a comparative study further than the things that make you say, category are working without foundation, and maybe among those neurotic CTs we have already discussed. If there is a conspiracy theory proposed here, unfounded as it would have to be concluding one of two things. A, some divine force, God, made these coincidental things occur, or B, due to the fact that time moves forward and Kennedy lived after Lincoln, those that perpetrated the Kennedy assassination consciously made careful effort to pay tribute to Lincoln by orchestrating these coincidences. Needless to say, neither option is likely, well considered, or provable. Thus we must dismiss the comparative theory summarily as a moment, and then move on. Rightfully, Curtis concludes, facts concerning the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy are amazingly similar. It is uncertain if such coincidences have any meaning, but they certainly are strange. Nevertheless, this is not to negate entirely the validity of studying as a unit the tragic deaths of these two great men, brilliant leaders cut down before their time. There's a picture of the Lincoln Memorial. In this temple is in the hearts of the people for whom he saved the Union. The memory of Abraham Lincoln is enshrined forever. Statue of Lincoln, Lincoln Memorial, Washington, D.C. Page 3. Abraham and Lincoln. In the case of Lincoln, we know a great deal more about who is responsible since the president was shot in full view in a public theater, and his assassin, John Wilkes Booth, leapt to the stage in front of the frightened crowd before fleeing. Quote, Abraham Lincoln and his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, attended the play Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater on April 14th, 1865. They were accompanied by General Ulysses S. Grant and his wife, Julia Dent Grant. However, Grant and his wife changed their plans and did not attend the play. The Lincolns attended the play with Clara Harris and Henry Rathbone. During this play, actor John Wilkes Booth entered Lincoln's state box undetected and shot him in the back of the head. He also stabbed Henry Rathbone in the arm. After shooting the president, Booth jumped out of the box onto the stage, broke his left leg, and yelled something that some eyewitnesses reported as Sic Semper Tyrannitus, as always to tyrants. Co-conspirator Lewis Powell, or Payne, attempted to assassinate Secretary of State William Seward, but only managed to injure him. David Harold accompanied Powell. However, Harold fled before the deed was finished. At the same time, George, Atzerodt was supposed to have killed Vice President Andrew Johnson. Atzerodt did not go through with the assassination. Kelly, 2012. There's a gif of a Lincoln mannequin moving about. Historian Christopher Hamner provides an excellent synopsis of John Wilkes Booth's rationale for orchestrating the elimination of Lincoln and other top Union officials.
You've never looked at a woman
Quote,
who's been totally vulnerable. You can't tell me what it feels like to wake up next to a woman and feel truly happy.
Booth was an open Confederate sympathizer during the war, a supporter of slavery. Booth believed that Lincoln was determined to overthrow the Constitution and destroy his beloved South. After Lincoln's re-election in November 1864, Booth devised a plan to kidnap the president and spirit him to Richmond, where he could be ransomed for some of the Confederate prisoners languishing in northern jails. Booth enlisted a group of friends from Washington to aid him in his attempt. That winter, Booth and his conspirators plotted a pair of elaborate plans to kidnap the president. The first involved capturing Lincoln in his box at Ford Theater and lowering the president to the stage with ropes. Booth ultimately gave up acting to focus on these schemes and spent more than $10 grand to buy supplies to outfit his band of kidnappers. Neither of the kidnapping plans bore fruit. The second, a ploy on March 17th to capture Lincoln as he traveled in his carriage, collapsed when the president changed his itinerary, and several of Booth's conspirators ultimately left the group. On the evening of April 11th, the president stood on the White House balcony and delivered a speech to a small group gathered on the lawn. 2 days earlier, Robert E. Lee had surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia at Appomattox Courthouse. And after 4 long years of struggle, it had become clear that the Union cause would emerge from the war victorious. Lincoln's speech that evening outlined some of his ideas about reconstituting the nation and bringing the defeated Confederate states back into the Union. Lincoln also indicated a wish to extend the franchise to some African Americans, at the very least those who had fought in the Union ranks during the war, and expressed a desire that the southern states would extend the vote to illiterate blacks as well. Booth stood in the audience for the speech, and this notion seemed to have amplified his rage at Lincoln. That means expletive citizenship, he told Lewis Powell, one of his band of conspirators. Now, by God, I'll put him through. That is the last speech he will ever make. 3 days later, Booth made good on his promise. Upon learning that Lincoln and his wife intended to see the play Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater, with commandeering General Ulysses S. Grant, Booth used his actors' connections there to gain access to the president's box. Finally rejecting the notion of kidnapping, Booth now planned to assassinate the president along with top officials in his administration. Besides Lincoln and General Grant, Secretary of State William Seward and Vice President Andrew Johnson were to be killed the same night by other members of Booth's gang. Booth appears to have plotted the murders in this belief that the simultaneous assassination of 4 top officials would throw the North and the Republican Party into chaos, enough for the Confederacy to reassemble itself. Hamner, 2010. The link. Why did John Wilkes Booth assassinate President Abraham Lincoln? By Martin Kelly. Continuing. Thus, in the end, there are few reasons to speak of John Wilkes Booth's rationale for killing Lincoln as a conspiracy theory. Rather, it is a conspiracy fact, a conspiracy reality. We know who killed Lincoln and made attempts on other top officials. We know why Booth planned it. We know that it was indeed a conspiracy. Quote, 8 Lincoln conspirators were caught over the next few days and tried by military court. They were found guilty on June 30th and given various sentences depending on their involvement. Lewis Powell, Payne, David Harold, George Atzerodt, and Mary Surratt were charged with conspiring with Booth along with various other crimes and hanged on July 7th, 1865. Kelly, 2012. A picture of William Peterson's boarding house where Lincoln died, Washington, D.C. Page 4. John F. Kennedy. A picture of Lee Harvey Oswald's mugshot. A 2003 poll found that 70% of Americans believe Kennedy's death was the result of a broader plot, and only 32 believe that Oswald acted alone. Conspire.com, retrieved August 2012. 6 years later, the number of skeptics had increased. Quote, most Americans still remain suspicious of the lone gunman conclusion of the Warren Commission report, and skeptical that the truth will ever be learned. Only 1 in 10 Americans believe that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. More than 7 times as many think that Oswald did not act alone. That same large majority of Americans believes that there was an official government cover-up. By 74% to 13%, the public thinks that there was an official cover-up to keep the public from learning the truth about the assassination. CBS News, 2009. Quote, the modish conspiracy theory with the greatest allure remains the assassination of John F. Kennedy in November 1963. This most elaborate and widely believed in conspiracy theory of recent American history stands on a monument of titillation. Yes, the event that shocked Americans and left many incapable of coming to terms with its senselessness, and especially the notion that so puny an individual as Lee Harvey Oswald could single-handedly rupture the policy. If you put the murdered president of the United States on one side of a balanced scale and the wretched waif Oswald on the other side, it doesn't seem to balance. You want to add something weightier than Oswald. A conspiracy would, of course, do the job nicely. But disproportion and disbelief hardly account for the enormous and enduring popularity of conspiracy theories about the Kennedy killing, all of which share the common assumption that Oswald was a patsy who got framed. So successful have the Kennedy assassinologists been that, according to opinion polls, some 2/3 of Americans in 1963 suspected a conspiracy, and 56% of the population still did so in 1991. Almost 30 years after the 1963 assassination, polls showed 3/4 of the American population believing Oswald was a part of a conspiracy, and an equal number suspecting an official cover-up in the case. Pipes, 1997, page 15. Before we mention similarities between the Lincoln assassination and that of John F. Kennedy, clearly, these similarities are merely coincidental and fascinating at best. Still, it is on the subject of the usage of the term conspiracy theory that a comparison between the 2 assassinations seems more critical. The Lincoln assassination was a dyed-in-wool conspiracy. There is much evidence to prove it. I'll get it. Conversely, to this day, the American government maintains that the Kennedy assassination was no conspiracy. Kennedy's death was blamed by the Warren Commission on a lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald, who allegedly fired a single bullet that tragic day in Dealey Plaza. A picture of John F. Kennedy. However, most who have studied Abraham Zapruder's home movie of the president's death and the wounding of Governor Connolly challenge this assertion. Clearly, they assert since cinematographic evidence indicates that more than one gunman was involved, then there is a provable conspiracy. In the film, say conspiracy theorists, the president's head clearly rocks forward when an initial shot is fired, and then subsequently lurches violently backward as it explodes, as if it had been shot from the front. Conspiracy theorists assert that the bullet that hit the president from the front was fired from the now infamous and iconic grassy knoll. Watch the Zapruder film on YouTube. The Zapruder film. I may do that later. The Kennedy assassination has been blamed by conspiracy theorists on a number of different groups, from the Russians to the Cubans to the Mafia to J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI, up to the CIA. Indeed, with the exception perhaps of the New World Order conspiracy theory, there is probably no other conspiracy theory for which conspiracy theorists have indicated such a vast array of possible instigators or participants. Quote, according to researchers, conspiracy theorists consider 4 or 5 groups, alone or in combination, to be the primary suspects in the assassination of Kennedy. The CIA, the military-industrial complex, organized crime, the government of Cuba, and Cuban exiles. Other domestic individuals, groups, or organizations implicated in various conspiracy theories include Lyndon Johnson, George H.W. Bush, Sam Giancia, J. Edgar Hoover, Earl Warren, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The United States Secret Service, the John Birch Society, and far-right wealthy Texans. Some others alleged foreign conspirators such as Fidel Castro, Nikita Khrushchev, Aristotle Onassis, the government of South Vietnam, and international drug lords, including a French heroin syndicate. John F. Kennedy Assassination Conspiracy Theories Wiki. Read John F. Kennedy Assassination Conspiracy Theory Wiki. I'm not going to do that. Page 5. E. Howard Hunt. Picture here, E. Howard Hunt. E. Howard Hunt, who alleged that he had been part of a group of men recruited by LBJ to kill Kennedy. The most shocking assertion in the entire history of the conspiracy theory came just over a decade ago, notably when CIA agent E. Howard Hunt believed he was dying and was on his deathbed. He confessed to his son that he had engineered the assassination using Oswald as a stooge, and the hit was requested by Vice President Lyndon Johnson, who became the next president. Haggard, 2007. Quote, E. Howard scribbled the initials LBJ, standing for Kennedy's ambitious vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson. Under LBJ, connected by a line, he wrote the name Cord Meyer. Meyer was a CIA agent whose wife had an affair with JFK. Later, she was murdered, a case that's never been solved. Next, his father connected to Meyer's name, the name Bill Harvey, another CIA agent. Also connected to Meyer's name was the name David Morales, yet another CIA man and a well-known, particularly vicious Black Ops specialist. And then his father connected to Morales' name with a line, then framed the word French gunman Grassy Knoll. So there it was, according to E. Howard Hunt, LBJ had Kennedy killed. It had long been speculated upon, but now E. Howard was saying that's the way it was, and that Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't the only shooter in Dallas. There was also, on the grassy knoll, a French gunman, presumably the Croatian mafia assassin Lucien Sarti. who had figured prominently in other assassination theories. Haggard, 2007. Many conspiracy theorists believe that Hunt's claim is logical since he was a Watergate burglar, a plumber, and a member of the S-Force, said to be the United States clandestine assassination squad allegedly responsible for the assassination of numerous international leaders. Read Eric Haggart's The Last Confessions of E. Howard Hunt. I'm not going to do that. Page 6. Motives. Motives for the assassination of John F. Kennedy are clear, say conspiracy theorists. Listen to JFK's Secret Society speech on YouTube. Secret Society speech. May do that later. On a few occasions, he went public with his disgust for the secret societies that he claimed operated the entire world without the knowledge of the general public. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are a people, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to the secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. There is little value to opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating an arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation, of our traditions that do not survive with it. American Society of Newspaper Editors, April 27, 1961. In addition, he vowed that he would dismantle the CIA and S-Force. Finally, he declared that he would recall American troops worldwide and gradually deconstruct and dismantle the the military-industrial complex. The goals of Kennedy's rants would have cost many powerful people a great deal of money, well into the billions. Without international wars, the military-industrial complex would have no reason and no venues to market their weapons of mass destruction. Kennedy had to go. Page 7. Definitions. Assassination, Abraham Lincoln, Archduke Ferdinand. Assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, Che Guevara, John F. Kennedy, Kennedy assassination, JFK, assassination, conspiracy theories, Martin Luther King Jr., assassination of MLK, Benazir Bhutto, assassination of Bhutto, Tupac Shakur, Lincoln and Kennedy coincidences, Lincoln assassination, John Wilkes Booth, and Mary Todd Lincoln, Ford's Theater, Ulysses S. Grant, Sic Temper Tyrannidas, Warren Commission, Lee Harvey Oswald, Lone Gunman Theory, Single Bullet Theory, Dealey Plaza, John Connolly, Abraham Zapruder Film, E. Howard Hunt, J. Edgar Hoover, CIA, Lyndon Johnson, Watergate Scandal, Cord Meyer, Bill Harvey, David Morales, Lucian Sarti, Grassy Knoll, White House Plumbers, Secret Society, Military-Industrial Complex. Thank you for listening.